back in the late 50s, under the library on North Main Street near North Avenue. The library is still there. I don't know if it's used as a library or not, but the Women's League of Bridgeport Fairfield, something like that, Women's League, had a project they worked on in which they had under the library, the whole bottom floor there, the basement, a museum. And they called this museum the Wonder Workshop Junior Museum. And they had folks come in and put on various displays and built displays. And somehow I got involved. I don't remember the details, but they asked if I would be their part-time director when I was a junior high science teacher in Fairfield Woods. And I said yes. And basically, I worked on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. And then during the week, the Women's League would have various members there that would have elementary school classes come in, and they would tour the museum and then give them some sort of program, and that would be a field trip for them. Now, interestingly, this was sort of a pilot project to see if this type of museum would be successful in Bridgeport. And as it seemed successful, they were moving on to build an actual building, which they did in 90 Acres Park. So toward the end of my tenure here as his part-time director, they opened up this Museum of Arts, Science, and Industry in the early 60s, I believe. And this closed, and all of the exhibits or what was useful for them were moved over to the new museum. So what I'm going to show you here is a little walk around of what the Wonder Workshop was like and some of the things we did. So we call this the Hall of Life, and many of these were exhibits that I built along with my junior curators who were high school students that showed an interest in science and this type of thing and would hang out on Saturdays and Sundays and be very useful as junior curators. So there's Joe Timko, who later became a teacher and I believe still is a teacher. He may be retired now. But here he's looking at some various paleontological examples of fossils and things. And then here we had kind of not dioramas, but relief maps of the state of Connecticut through geological history. And then I guess over there it was others. And it showed that through time how the land changed and the oceans covered and then receded and then the glacial periods, and we tried to give a little bit of information on that. And we see at the end here of how the telephone worked. And there was a little model that we had set up, and there's a little model of, oh, not model, there's actually a skeleton, I believe, of a cat up there. Okay, our Hall of Life. And again, this is something that I put together. We had bought this from Carolina Biological Supply and then made a little exhibit of it. Here are the models of mitosis showing cell division, and then some paleontological, I can't get that word out too well, words of things. What we see here are some shark's teeth, and there's a picture of me as a young fella. And then this again was a chart, typical, I think this was from Ward's Scientific Company, that showed the primordial life, the first cell, the blastula, the gastrula, and then the various phylums. A little Hall of Life chart of evolution. And then we went into eyeglasses and optics and sight. And there was a typical chart. And what you could see from that in different fields of, I can't read it too well, major something, and then dealing with how to correct vision problems. And then I believe one of these books dealt with colored blindness. Oh, okay. Then we went into our little planetarium that we had in the back room where we could control the lights and had ultraviolet lighting. And of course, the ultraviolet paints would make it seem very eerie at times, models of the planets. And then this device here would rotate, showing the cosmos as it moved around the North Pole, or the North Star, I should say. And then there would be presentations of this. Okay, this is back to contact lenses and what they were like, parts of the eye, and then what lenses do in correcting vision. And now we're back to our model Earth that would rotate, would turn around, and light coming from this side would show the effects of sunlight. This would be daytime here. This would be nighttime. And as the Earth turns, you go from day to night. And then depending where it is, you can get the seasons. So a number of things that could be brought out from this model. And not to forget the arts. We had the science a little bit. Now the Hall of Art. And there's a little paint board there. And we talked a little bit about some of the major paintings. Subject, color, mood, shape, composition. Let's look at a painting and what can you appreciate from it. And then we had some information that the tour guide would give. Again, wasn't anything too great, but a start. And our visitors would come, and people could casually look around. And again, it was basically set up for children, uh, elementary school children, to introduce them to some of these concepts. And this was the room where the uh, Earth rotated and the galaxy and the special lighting, and where we could show movies too. And along this back wall, it was weather across the country. So out here was the Pacific, over there was the Atlantic, and then the Rocky Mountains, the plains, Appalachians. And I didn't do this one. This one was done, but again, showing uh, that at any one time you might have different weather, as we see today through the weather maps of what goes on. And this was a model that I made actually. Got a little motor that rotated. We put a concave lens and convex lens and has it passed over the light. And kids always like to press buttons. So by pressing the button, they could get this to turn. And then they could see, I guess something was in here. I don't remember what it was though, but it was just kind of interesting. But again, for kids. Now, this was the Foucault pendulum. Was developed in 1851 by Jean Bernard Leon Foucault, and it's supposed to be like, I think, 60 feet long, hangs from the ceiling somewhere, and a heavy weight on the bottom, and you start it oscillating back and forth. And as the Earth rotates, because of the nature of a pendulum, it tends to stay in the same place, so that slowly the Earth is turning underneath it, and it appears that the pendulum is changing shape where it's not. So that is an indication of Earth's rotation. So this was our little hall of science here. And then there was a model of a jet or a jet rocket type of thing, which I guess someone had made and donated or was purchased. I did the Foucault pendulum because I had seen this in another museum, and then that's what these children are looking at. And of course, the mechanics of it would be explained. Okay, so this is a Douglas 5582 skyrocket. Someone gave us this model and we displayed it. Now here what we're seeing is something we would actually change during various seasons, which was the typical environment of what was out there. Here it looks like a fall season, and then we would make it winter, and then spring, and then summer. And it was just a typical Connecticut woodland scene. Now, at one time, we used to have live snakes, and there would be snake or two in there. And I remember we had a black snake in there one time, common black snake. And you can't, you might think snakes don't remember, but they didn't like one of our junior curators. And every time that curator would come by it, I guess it would sense it. Kind of like me, okay, I got along well, but I kind of remember that, but not too much. It's a long time ago now. Now here, prior to this, we had a live snake collection of all the living snakes in Connecticut. I think there were like 14 species, and including a reptile, the rattlesnake, and the copperhead were some of the poisonous snakes that we had. And again, we had it for a while, but then every once in a while they would escape, and the library upstairs didn't like that very much. And it took care and maintenance. We had a fellow that was a serpentologist that would kind of handle all of this, and then he, I guess, disassociated himself or got separated from the museum, and then we got rid of the snakes. And then I built this in his place, which was like a little viewing device, and we'd see some slides, and we built lights behind it. Yeah, I could remember over a couple of weekends we built this, exploring with science, and again, getting young folks involved. And there's a picture of me in our office, a couple of our junior curators. This was the headdress of our Eagle Dance that I made, Eagle Dance outfit, and there's a video on another one. That's Joe Timko and David, I can't remember David's last name, but nice fellas. And I kept in touch with Joe for a long time. And that will be that. And in reflection, that was the Junior League women of Bridgeport, I believe. And eventually, they did have the Discovery Museum. Well, I should say the Museum of Art, Science, and Industry. That today it's the Discovery Museum up at 90 Acres Park in Bridgeport off of Park Avenue. And that fella toward the end there, I think I can go back and show you. Yeah, that's David Scott. That name came back to me. Again, we had a number of nice fellas. Dennis Fusay was another fella. I don't have a picture of him here, but interestingly, he's a neighbor of mine out where I live now. So that will wind us up, and a little walk down memory lane of the Wonder Workshop Junior Museum.